And in the midst of this, we have leaned into the strength of many to help us find our way through this darkness and into the light of hope and peace.
Last night's memorial at the Elgar Peterson Arena in Humboldt Arena was a chance for the community to gather and mourn together. On Friday at around 5 o'clock, a team bus carrying the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team collided with a semi-trailer on Highway 35. The crash left 15 people dead and another 14 injured.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
A memorial set up at the Saskatchewan Legislature today. It is Monday, April 9th. Good evening, and thanks for watching. The devastating news trickled out over the weekend. So many young lives taken too soon. Hockey players, coaches, and 2 radio station employees are dead. And late last night, a shocking turn of events. One family found out their boy was actually alive in a case of mistaken identity. Another family is grieving. CBC's Dan Zakreski brings us the story.
Bittersweet barely begins to cover it. Xavier LaBelle's friends spent 2 days grieving the dead teen, except he hadn't died. His teammate, Parker Tobin, had. LaBelle's friends found out about the mix-up this morning.
It's been a long few days, but it's of course bittersweet because, yes, we got our friend back, but there's also another family out there that heard the terrible news. So
now it's Parker Tobin's family and friends who are grieving. His family spent 2 days at the bedside of a terribly injured young man, believing him to be their son. That, say his friends, says all they need to know about the violence of this crash.
I thought there's no way they could have mistaken his identity or like that, and then I kind of come to realize of how messed up people were in that crash and how hard it was to identify people.
The Tobin and LaBelle families released a joint statement late this afternoon. They say that they're grieving together and that they hope people will focus on the victims and the survivors, not what happened in the confusion around an unimaginable tragedy. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Now, this kind of mix-up is unprecedented in Saskatchewan's history. Identifying more than 24 people in the midst of chaos is a huge task. Ministry of Justice spokesperson Drew Wilby says many people are involved in the aftermath of an accident such as this, and mistakes are very rare, but they can happen.
I can speak to you a little bit about the process of identification and how that works, and it is just that. It is a process. It's not one individual that makes the identification decision. There is a lot of work that goes into that through, number one, identifying the survivors of an incident like this, looking at the level of trauma that was involved, and trying to determine who is who. A lot of these boys looked alike. They had the blonde hair that was supportive of their team for their playoff run. They're very similar builds. They're all very similar ages, and they're very athletic, of course, as they are junior A hockey players. As we, look back on what occurred, and as we look back on those processes, we'll continue to assess the work that we do.
One of the teens killed in the crash has saved several lives by donating his organs. 21-year-old Logan Boulay was a defenseman from Lethbridge, Alberta. His family says he was kept on life support after the crash until his organs could be harvested. 6 people were recipients. The act of generosity has been met with an outpouring of support on social media. The health region has confirmed today that 4 people from the crash are still in critical condition with life-threatening injuries. 4 others are listed in serious condition, which means significant injuries. 4 more are in stable condition. Meanwhile, the Humboldt community continues to grieve. Thousands gathered at a vigil in town last night. The CBC's Charles Hamilton joins us now from the Elgar Peterson Arena in Humboldt. Charles, give us a sense of how the community is doing today.
Well, Christy, obviously this is still a community in shock. This is still a community grieving all day today. You can see behind me there's these flowers. People were coming, people were mourning, people were grieving. But at this point, it sounds like the community is trying to do what it can to move forward. Of course, this is just an unspeakable tragedy, an unimaginable tragedy, and it's going to be tough. But I spoke to the mayor of Humboldt today. He's been speaking throughout all of this. His name is Rob Minch. Here's what he had to say about how the community is going to move forward.
it's been a whirlwind the last few days, and it's just, it's like putting one foot in front of the other, trying to make your way through each day. And as we're going forward, it's going to be, where do we go from here? How do we figure this out?
Now, Charles, I understand that a new program was introduced today to help provide assistance to those connected with this tragedy. Tell us more about that.
Well, Chrissy, today the president of the SJHL Hockey League, obviously the hockey league that the Humboldt Broncos were a part of, announced that through corporate donations, they are going to set up a fund for player assistance. Now, this fund is going to be for mental health supports, for things like counseling, not just for players here in Humboldt, but for players right across Saskatchewan in the league, people who might be affected by this tragedy. At that press conference, at the announcement of this new fund, Sheldon Kennedy spoke. Sheldon Kennedy was involved in a bus crash in Swift Current when he was a member of the Swift Current Broncos. He went on to be an NHL player, but here's what he said about the long-lasting scars of that tragic 80s bus crash that he was involved in.
To know better is to do better, and we know better today. We know the impact of trauma, we know the impact of PTSD, and we know the length of time it is. The scars that last a lifetime are real.
Now, Charles, there are still lots of questions about how something like this could happen. So what's the latest with the investigation?
Well, Chrissy, there's a lot of speculation out there. Obviously, we've seen aerial photographs of the crash site. There's a lot of people speculating online about that intersection. But, so far, and I should say the safety of that intersection, but so far we haven't heard anything definitive from the RCMP. All we know is that the driver was taken briefly into custody. He has since been released, and obviously they haven't said yet whether or not this is a criminal investigation. So, people here in Humboldt obviously still waiting for that news, waiting for some sort of answers about how this horrific bus crash could have happened.
All right, thanks so much, Charles. The CBC's Charles Hamilton reporting live from Humboldt tonight. The Broncos crash is not the first fatal collision at that particular intersection. 21 years ago, a family from British Columbia was driving east on Highway 335. They missed the stop sign and collided with a semi-trailer. Their minivan burst into flames. All 6 people inside died. That included 2 young girls and a newborn baby. The driver of the semi-trailer they hit still lives in Humboldt.
The stress of it all sort of thing, like as soon as it happens, do you take blame, or even myself, you sort of thought that maybe you could have done something to prevent this, but once it happens, it's too late, eh?
Jim Curver calls the intersection of highways 35 and 335 a dangerous crossing. He wants the province to add more rumble strips there. Other truckers say adding flashing LED lights to the stop signs would also make them easier to see. This tragic accident has touched so many people from across the province and beyond. Here's the CBC's Bridget Yard with more on what people are doing to help show their support for Humboldt.
It's hard to find a flag that isn't flying at half-mast today in Saskatchewan, and at Regina Catholic schools, they'll stay that way for longer than usual.
We are flying all of our flags at half-mast, and we'll do that for 15 days, 1 day for each of the souls that were lost. And we're also, throughout the day, each school is holding a liturgy that we prepared over the weekend to remember everyone who passed away, and also to pray for those who are injured.
Broncos player Adam Harold attended Dr. Martin Lebolda's Catholic High School in Regina. He died in the crash. West says school will continue as usual since some students are looking for normalcy at this time. Saskatoon Catholic schools, on the other hand, will focus on what the Director of Education calls a curriculum of care. Students are off school today and will be back in class tomorrow. Beyond Saskatchewan, the tributes are pouring in. The Ukrainian national hockey team laid flowers at the Canadian Embassy in a touching gesture of solidarity. Closer to home in Canada, people are leaving hockey sticks outside their homes. Regina sports mom Scotty Frostad told us why she was compelled to do so. She said, "I had the porch light on too. I read something about how one billet family would turn on the porch light when they went to bed. The billet was supposed to turn it off when they got home at night. The next morning, they would know he was home safe if the light was off." So many coaches, players, support staff didn't make it home safe. And for them, porch lights across the country are still shining. Bridget Yard, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Meanwhile, financial support continues to pour in. A GoFundMe page created by a Humboldt hockey mom has shattered expectations. The GoFundMe page was set up by Sylvie Kellington on Saturday with a modest goal of $2 million, then reset to $4 million. But that mark has been blown away by the outpouring of support from across the globe. More than 80,000 people from 65 countries have contributed to the total, which now stands close to $6.3 million. Kellington says to start, she would like to see the money go to support the victims.
Well, in terms of figuring out how to manage this money, I'm hoping that there's some sort of committee formed and they'll be able to figure out exactly where to put everything. Ideally, that money, I'm hoping, goes to funeral costs, goes to helping all the families out financially. Yeah. And I know there'll probably be rehab costs and home renovations that need to be done for some of the players, and I mean, I don't know exactly where that'll end.
Kellington's GoFundMe page is not the only one to come up since Friday's tragedy. More are being created daily. GoFundMe has created a cause page so that anyone who is interested in helping can find verified campaigns in one place. Last night, Broncos team chaplain Sean Brandow gave an emotional speech to a packed arena. He was on the road behind the bus and came across the wreckage. He says physical wounds will heal, but the emotional scars will last a lifetime.
I don't want to be here. I really don't want to be here. But it's good that we are. Friday, I didn't want to go to the game. My kids begged me to go to the hockey game. We traveled up and arrived at the scene shortly after the bus and walked up and on a scene that I never want to see again, to sounds I never want to hear again. To greet Chris, I just feel so lost. And to go to the hospital and walk around and just hear groaning and panic and fear and distress and pain and just nothing but darkness. I think it's pretty fitting the way everything's set up here. I sit right behind the bench every game, and I stare at the back of your players' heads, just like I'm doing right now. I sit there because I want to see the names on their jerseys. Tell every team that comes through, I've chaplained, that there's a name on the front of the jersey and there's a name on the back of the jersey. The coach's job and the GM's job and really what this community is all about and what everyone's here for is the name on the front of the jersey. You know, it's huge, this team, this group of guys that all rally together around this one thing. I like to look at the names on the back of the jerseys, and I think it's really fitting now that I just want you to know that we hurt with you. Each name represents a family. As Jesus appeared to his disciples after he rose again, many of them wondered if it was Jesus. And I've heard so many times, I wonder if this community will ever be the same. You know how Jesus showed that he was who he said he was? His scars. A scar is something that is healed, but still there. This isn't going to go away. It's not going to be as raw. Can we heal? Yes. Will the scar be there? Yes.
People across the country have been showing support for the victims of the Humboldt crash. Edmonton's downtown was lit up in green and gold on Saturday in support of the Broncos. The support was felt in the NHL as well. The Winnipeg Jets and the Chicago Blackhawks wore the word Broncos on the back of their game jerseys in place of their own names to honor the victims on Saturday. Stay with us. We'll have your weather forecast after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital Auto Mall. Mission 1000 is on now.
Here's a live look outside at Regina, where temperatures are sitting at -1 degree. It's been a cloudy day across the province, but temperatures are starting to get a little bit warmer after so many days well below seasonal last week. Temperatures right around the freezing mark, even just above the freezing mark in parts of the province. Here's a look at the rest of our current conditions. 8 degrees in Maple Creek, so a lot of warm weather flooding into southwestern Saskatchewan. -1 degree if you're joining us again from Regina, -2 in Saskatoon, -2 as well in Humboldt, Saskatchewan this evening. Now with the wind chill, it is feeling a little cooler, still feeling into those higher minus single digits, but that wind chill factor will be less and less of a factor as we move through the rest of the week. It looks like things will warm up and we're going to see that warmer weather lasting for a little while, maybe one cooler day or so this week on Thursday, but otherwise it is going to feel a lot more like spring out there. As for our current winds, a little breezy in Regina, winds gusting to about 30 kilometers per hour in the Queen City. Winds coming out of the southwest though, so that is ushering in some milder air. It looks like we'll be well above the freezing mark in much of Saskatchewan again tomorrow. As for our satellite and radar, quite a bit of cloud cover out there, light flurries here or there. Looking at the risk of fog developing tonight across the province, so you could run into some lower visibilities with that. Then clearing out to some sunshine, but it won't last forever. It looks like we're going to be seeing another round of wet weather as we move into your Wednesday. As for our prairie outlook, here's a look at what we're seeing. Relatively quiet for tomorrow. Again, the risk of fog in the morning, but at about noon, quite a bit of sunshine. Cloud cover starting to build in, though, into the evening, and then seeing a low pressure system moving in from Alberta. Now, this will bring a little bit of a messy mix, the risk of freezing rain mixed with snowfall. Then tomorrow afternoon, you could even see a few rain showers. So it will likely be a slushy day for your Wednesday, likely pretty slippery out there as well. As for Regina's forecast, 3 degrees tomorrow. Again, fog in the morning, that dissipating through your late morning hours into the afternoon. 2 degrees on Wednesday, and that's when we're going to be seeing that slushy weather with that system rolling through. Clearing out, though, for your Thursday and Friday. Now, ending the week a little bit cooler, but then the warmer weather moving back in, +3 for Saturday. You could run into some more wet weather for your Monday, but temperatures still sitting well above the freezing mark. And into Saskatoon tomorrow, again, the risk of some fog early on in the day, 2 degrees out there. Sunshine for your Tuesday, but then a little more snowfall with that low pressure system from Alberta for your Wednesday. Sunshine for the rest of the forecast period. Really, you could see a few flurries on Monday, but again, seeing that little blip in temperatures for your Thursday and Friday, and then warming up a little bit, 2 degrees on Saturday, staying around 1 degree for Sunday and Monday. Another movement to honor the Humboldt victims is spreading across social media throughout the country. It's called Jersey Day, and it's taking place this Thursday. It'll be a day to don the colors of the Humboldt Broncos, which is green and gold. Participants say it's an opportunity to show the community that Canadians across the nation are holding these families in our hearts and spreading the love during their time of mourning. Stay with us, we'll have more news coming up. Tomorrow, Minister of Finance Donna Harpower will deliver the provincial budget. Harpower is also the MLA for Humboldt. Typically, the finance minister does a photo op for reporters the day before the budget showing off the shoes she will wear. Now, that was cancelled today. Instead, the members of the legislature spent the afternoon offering statements of condolence to the members of the Humboldt Broncos, the families of the victims, and offering their support for the community. Premier Scott Moe was the first to speak, wearing a T-shirt that read, "We are Humboldt strong." He called the tragedy unimaginable.
This is our team, the Humboldt Broncos. This is our community, Mr. Speaker, the city of Humboldt. Compassionate, tough, resilient, and united. These are our families. These are the families that we reach out to. These are the families that we embrace. These are the families that we uplift. These are the families that we support. Together, we will get through this.
More than a dozen MLAs spoke this afternoon, lasting 2 hours. Question period was cancelled today and tomorrow. The budget will be delivered tomorrow at 1:30. We will have live coverage from the budget on Facebook and on our website.
These young men, Doyle fought
Well, that's it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to our website. That's cbc.ca/sask. We leave you now with scenes from Sunday night's vigil in Humboldt in honor of the Broncos. Thousands gathered to pay tribute and heal as a community. From all of us here at CBC, good night and take care.
It is my pleasure and honor to be here with you tonight. Thank you for joining myself, the city and the clergy of Humboldt to pray for the Humboldt Broncos, their families and billet families, and our community. It is important at times like these, when we are struck speechless by great tragedy, that we gather to support one another and pray together.
Going forward, in the next days, weeks, and months, we will do our best together to get through this and come out the other end. To use a hockey analogy, we'll stick handle our way through this, and hopefully we won't have to dump it in the corner, and we'll get to the net. So.
This tragedy has devastated our families, our Humboldt Broncos organization, our community, Saskatchewan, Canada, and our world. For many of us, the real reach and scope of this community tragedy will not be fully realized for days or weeks or months or even years as we continue to process everything that has taken place over these last days.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
And now, as we conclude our time together tonight with this prayer, I invite you to reach out now, as you are comfortable, as you are able, to hold the hand of someone next to you or near you. And I want you to do that because in a few moments, when we go our separate ways, I want you to recall the touch of that hand, the warmth of that hand, the blessing in that hand, so that it will remind you in these difficult days ahead that you are not alone, that we are not alone.